Bill, we've already started recording and we're all still here.
Where's my music? Where's my intro?
Hold on. Like I told you, I'm on a different computer and everything isn't set up quite the same. Here we go.
We're all...
Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Loved watching Seth dance there for the opening intro. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Seth.
I'm Jenna.
I'm Chris.
And today, in light of the Dune sequel about to hit theaters, we thought we'd step back and take a look at some older incarnations of Dune, the series, and I think the original Dune movie too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, who wants to kind of kick off the discussion here?
Where do we want to start? The series or the older film?
Let's start with the older film.
That sounds good.
I think that one, in my opinion, so the older film actually is pretty. For me, it's my first Dune experience. I'll say even before the book. So the person up on the screen now, for those of you watching, that's Paul Atreides, son of the Duke and kind of the main character of this book series and film. So Paul has been had to accompany his father across the universe to go run operations, so to speak, on this planet called Dune. And, there they mine spice, and the saying goes, those who control the spice control the universe. So there's a prophecy about a person who will come, I believe the Kwisatz Haderach.
Haderach.
Yep. And basically wreck some shit for people who are trying to control this space. And he's kind of like this ultimate powerful dude, completely intertwined with the planet, the spice, the worms, and all that kind of stuff. But Dune kind of covers this young man's journey. I think it covers at least a couple or a few years from when they land on the planet and Paul's
several
years, because when they arrive, there's kind of a war going on between different factions, if you will, in the political universe. So this covers Paul's growth in there and how he rises up to basically rule the planet, so to speak. So, but yeah, that's my first foray into Dune before I got into the books. Lots of wonderful actors in here.
Sting.
Yep.
As Fade Ruatha.
So he plays a ruthless killer combatant.
The Duke's nephew.
Yep. And so there's a cool... the movie only covers so much of all of the ties between the family members and the different factions and stuff, because obviously you have to cram this into like a 2-hour film. But the book does so much of a better job of world building here and covering all the different little things. But again, for your first foray into the film, this one was pretty epic. So for me, I've seen this film maybe 15, 20 times. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the ugliest, the Baron, right?
Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah, he's probably the ugliest bad guy you will see. It's pretty gross in this film. But he's also pretty sinister in who he is too. So he's a pretty cool bad guy. He's just kind of disgusting,
Yeah.
Full out.
I think it's important to take a moment, because what I think the miniseries does better than the original film, although I love the original film, is explain that the Kwisatz Haderach is a Bene Gesserit goal. It's specifically someone that they're breeding for who can do all calculations. But the mythology on Dune itself is a plant from the Bene Gesserits to make sure that if any of them ever get stuck there as a part of their breeding program to continue to be protected, this Mahdi figure, this Messiah figure, it's not something that the Dune people came up with. It's what the Bene Gesserits planted as a part of a potential lever of control if they had to.
Yeah.
And I think the miniseries does a better job explaining that than the original movie.
And I think part of that again is the format of it, right? In a miniseries, you have time to tell that story and watch it play out and let that kind of develop. Whereas in a movie, you're like, all right, so there's this guy, it's going to be this Kwisatz Haderach, and it ends up being Paul. The Bene Gesserit aren't very happy about it, and all those other things that happen. And it's like, all right, we got to get to A to B. Whereas in the series, it's like, we can play this out. We can actually get into the detail. So I still think the film did an okay job at a high level, but you're right. There is a lot that goes into the Bene Gesserits and what their history is and kind of where their place is in the universe. And the film doesn't do a very good job of that as far as the full history of the Harkonnens, Paul Atreides' family, and what their history is. Oh my God, I forgot the people who live on Dune, what they called them. The Fremen, yes. The Fremen and their history, how they came to be. A lot of that is covered in other either series or the books themselves. So, but for a movie, for getting through it, it does a really good job for being in the universe of Dune and kind of covering everything at a high level to get you through, and it's pretty much understandable. But the lore is awesome.
Yeah. So one of the things about Dune and what the movie adaptations have to do is that the setting for Dune is so complex and just filled with history. Like, the reason that Brian Herbert is able to write all these prequel novels for Dune is because he's got all this back work that his dad, Frank Herbert, did to write these novels. And like each of the what they didn't have time for in the 1984 Dune is any of that complex world building. Like, you got 2 hours. Okay, here's the weirding way. The weirding way is shouting into a device. Like, they had to make some weird compromises, given that like the setting is so complex and rich. Like, out of all the books I've read, this is like one of my favorites for complex political machinations. Like, get out of the way, Game of Thrones. Like, the people who are moving in chess pieces in Dune have been doing so for like 10,000 years.
And the book, the books continue along that. This isn't like a 50 or 100 year kind of thing. To Seth's point, it's thousands of years, to the extent where even Paul isn't necessarily, as you go further in the novels, even the center point of what's going on. The series starts with him, but then it starts to build out into this world that it's a lot bigger than Paul himself.
Yeah. But the Bene Gesserits that don't get much. They get, everyone kind of gets short shrift in the 1984 one. Yeah. And what they don't really focus on in the miniseries either are mentats. And like, that's because they had to cut out so much of why mentats are important.
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, as Gurney, the master of weapons. Loved it.
That's something the 1984 version definitely has, is Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck. And
I mean, the star-studded cast was great in the 84 version. I mean, what they were able to do, I mean, they couldn't dwell as much on this. important message that Frank Herbert was interested in, which is don't rely blindly on heroes, and like be able to make your own decisions, because if you don't, the wave of control and chaos that can ensue because you aren't trusting your own mind can be insane and deadly. But they create this sci-fi epic that makes you love storytelling in the sci-fi world, and all of these, like, 'cause you get everything with the 84 version. It's the music, the acting was really great, the everything.
Toto did the music for the 1984 Dune, and I still fucking love it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was really great. It was a one of those iconic ones that will go with people for a long time to come. And it just seemed to fit. It was almost kind of perfect. It was a score that kind of painted a good picture of the planet, its vastness, and everything like that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, they did a really good, like, epic kind of 1980s type music.
Yeah.
It's
Interestingly
great.
enough, we wanted to talk about some comparisons. I'm one who's pretty well attuned to any series and the scores and the music that goes along with it. I can't retain anything from the sci-fi version, and I don't know if that's because it just wasn't that memorable or what the deal is, but I cannot remember any notable score from the sci-fi series.
I was actually thinking about that while rewatching it last night, and yeah, the music is fairly unremarkable. I don't think that they had much in the way of budget for it.
Which is fair. I mean, their goal wasn't, it wasn't like it was supposed to be a big feature film. It was just a series, so they focused on how much of the content they'd get in there and everything like that. I remember it being okay, but also at the same time, I never went back to watch it. I got through it once back when it was like released 20 plus years ago, and I haven't been back since. Interestingly enough.
Yeah. So I mean, why don't we just talk about the miniseries really quick?
Yeah,
then?
let's talk about what they did with that.
So
I had two observations that really stood out with the miniseries. Is that one, it kind of suffered a little bit from that 90s really neat, like, as in clean sets of world building. Like, and what I go back to is Hercules. Like Hercules and Xena, the TV series, they were supposed to be ancient Greece, but you know how everyone was a little bit too clean?
Yeah.
Like the costumes were too clean, they were too perfect. That's a little bit of the vibe I got. Like the sets were too clean in this. Everything was too well put together, almost like a stage production. And then the actors themselves, like half, if not 3/4 of the actors gave me more of like they had come from stage production to do, like the way they emoted and the way they spoke, like the Baron, even Fade, the Bene Gesserit leader. They just felt more like stage actors than film actors. Not that they were bad, but it's definitely had more of that than a movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, the miniseries, you definitely feel the made-for-TV nature of it. Like, you can see it in the backgrounds that are obviously green screened. You can kind of see it in the quality of the costuming, even though, like, they let the costumer go nuts for this miniseries. Yeah, there's a whole array of costumes, and like, I don't know if they just like let whoever was in charge of costuming at the entire wardrobe and just said, "Have fun, kid."
Because that's like, those who can see the screen, that's the Emperor in the background of that image that they just had up. The Emperor of the universe wearing bell sleeves that look like they're made out of fans.
with like gold like shoulder piece and a kind of kimono looking thing. Like, yeah, it's like some of the costumes in this are nuts, but it's also like great because it's like color and like nothing's all samey and gray like we see in sometimes other movies. Every group has their own very distinct style.
Yes, which is great. And I don't say those things to put it down. I think what they did in the details is really good. And it's like, watching with my husband, he's like, the last 20 minutes, he's like, this goes really dark. Like people's heads are getting cut off, like babies are getting killed.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you've got these clean, neat sets and costuming, like the actual action is pretty. There's so much collateral damage. And again, that goes back to, I think, what Frank Herbert really wanted to show is that good, bad, when you start getting into these types of conflicts, everybody's getting shredded.
I didn't get that feel, really. I think this is much more of a revenge tale. And it's more along the lines of John Wick than it is a cautionary tale.
I just didn't. John Wick is a whole different thing. Wick is like.
I know it's a whole different thing, but it's kind of that feel of like these bad people have been doing their bad things for generations, and they finally fucked around, and this is where they fucked around, and Paul Atreides is where they find out.
but even in that, even if that's the case, you see a lot of the Fremen dying, and even just people in the cities, like the people in the main city on Dune, who are just there living their life, and they're caught in the crossfires, even though they choose to rise up too. A lot of them are getting killed, and their buildings blown up.
Well, it brings the reality of
it's not the main focus of the story, though.
It's not, but I think that's the point where they spend a lot of video on that. They show a lot of video of that in the last 20 minutes, like more than I remembered. Like they spend a lot of film shots and time on it.
Well, that seems more like a directorial choice than like what the story was going for. Like, I think that's not in the textual reading of Dune anywhere. And I haven't picked it up to this point in the miniseries. Like to me, this is Shakespearean kind of in nature.
Oh yeah, no, and the way they played it on the TV miniseries is very Shakespearean.
Like this is kind of Hamlet. If it's not a tragedy, it's Hamlet coming back to reclaim the throne and throw down all his enemies. Like it's kind of the classic coming of the King Arthurian legend coming of the king kind of thing. Unless,
but then the next step you don't see when the series ends, but where the books continue, is through Paul's actions, he leads directly to the death of 60 billion people.
I mean, so part of that is, so it's been a long time since I've read Messiah of Dune and Children of Dune. But what Paul's trying to do throughout through those is, his problem is he's seen the future and he is in control of it or he can control events to some extent. But it's one of those where if you've got perfect control of the future, or perfect vision of the future, you're always trying to weave that vision into a better future. And if I'm remembering my readings of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, what he's trying to do, and what he's been doing is like, the shit was always gonna get bad. Yeah. Like they're always talking about that space that the guild navigators and the sister or the Bene Gesserit can't see behind.
Yep.
There's a wall they can't see past. That's the shit getting so fucking bad. That is kind of like the end of humanity because of the machinations of everyone coming together. They were always going to come together at Dune at this one point. And that's where he's kind of step in. He sees beyond it. And he's trying to get people out of it without everyone dying, and the 60 billion dead people because of his fanatic followers was the less evil choice.
Yeah.
Right. Because and even that he couldn't fully he needed to go even further, and he didn't have the stomach for it, so his son had to take it even further.
Right.
So I mean, 60 billion people, the lesser of two evils, which is total extinction, even that wasn't farther enough for what was necessary for the calculations that he saw, which is crazy. Which again, you don't get into the movies, but it's definitely where you see that no matter what happens with Dune Part 2, they could really take this in a meaningful way with the themes further. If they're allowed to do it the right way, hopefully, in the film.
If Dune is a cautionary story for anything, I think it's of religion. But
well, it's a bunch of different things. It's religion and politics and attempting to control and your responsibility to the environment. I mean,
Dune is a very complex story, and I fucking love it. Like, the political machinations, like, Duke Harkonnen is one of my favorite villains. He is crafty, he is cunning, he is, and he's the sort of evil that is propelled entirely by personal gain.
Yeah.
And disconcern with the fate of others. And yet he's so passionate in how he hates and who he hates that he's just a really interesting villain to watch. Like, Jenna, do you remember the guy who played Harkonnen in the miniseries was really good, I thought.
Yes.
Like, he's a good scene-chewing villain. Like, do you remember at the end of the first part where Leto gasses the room and he manages to escape, and then he turns directly to camera to address the audience?
Mm-hmm.
That was so great.
He just needed to be uglier in the miniseries, and that's
so.
I think so. Like, I like how grotesque he was in the 84 version, and I like how environmentally sensitive in the newer version he is. Like, because you can see the Harkonnen families are more impacted by their environment and their planet where they come from, which is cool.
I mean, that is kind of cool, but also I like the aesthetics of House Harkonnen in the second area in the miniseries, because they are they're a noble house. Like,
yes.
They wouldn't look like gross mutants all the time. Like, the Baron Harkonnen would be able to be someone who would potentially occupy the throne of Emperor, or at least regard him as be able to regard him or be regarded as close to a peer.
Yep.
They just, like, I could see normal Harkonnen society looking like that, but the Baron and whatnot should be like the fancy nobility, and like I like that portrait.
That's fair. I think you're right. They did do a better job in showing they are a noble house in the miniseries. I mean,
he was still pretty gross. Like, we see a lot more of his thighs than I'm comfortable with.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
equal to all the great Cheney side boob. You get her.
So, Bill and Linda, I don't remember if you guys watched the miniseries at all, but
No.
out of the past film and the new film, which is a two-parter, as we mentioned in the beginning, we're getting part 2 here soon.
Yeah.
What did you like about the newer film? Was there anything that you missed out of the old film? Even though, granted, we're not complete yet, but for the first half we did get.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
Well, I like the fact that it was the world seemed to be more real, more well imagined, and very well created than the original movie. I would have liked to have seen Patrick Stewart back in it, although maybe not in the role of Gurney Halleck.
Yeah.
Because I love Patrick Stewart, right?
Yeah.
But Yeah, no, you know, it's really hard to compare a 1984 movie
Oh yeah,
to
for
a
sure.
2023 movie just
Visually
because,
or a graphical kind of perspective.
yeah, just because of the advances in technology. But still, I thought, the newer movie just seemed to be more well written, I think, and the
Okay. Yep.
characters. I like the characters better. The actors that played the characters seem to be a lot more into their roles, I guess, more believable. And even the Baron Harkonnen, I thought I liked him better in the way he was realized and brought to life in the new movie versus in the 1984 version. So definitely 100% on the new one for me. Linda?
Well, I mean, that actor is a Skarsgård, and that whole family, crazy good actors.
Yeah.
So he just does a really good, imposing, like manipulative, brilliant, evil actor.
Yeah, that's why I like the Baron Harkonnen. He's good. Like he had a plan that was gonna work right up until none of these Atreides are dead.
Right.
And one of them became a god, and whoops.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's spoiler alert. It's his own grandson.
It's Dune. There's no spoiler alerts on this. Like
when the book is 30 years old. Yeah.
The book is 30 years old. They've done multiple cinematic. There's no
Yeah, we're just getting updated retellings of, the first book, and hopefully in the future we start to see more, because there's plenty to work with. It's just no different than what people want from, maybe Game of Thrones. I'd still rank Dune above that, like you would, Seth. But the material there, the lore that's there, you can do a lot with. And so if care is taken with it, you can build out another mini series or expansion of what they've already done, or another film based off a certain point in time on any of that. So
you could do the Butlerian Jihad, and I would love to watch that. The War Against the Machines.
Yeah.
The reason that they have mentats instead of computers, human machines, is because they fucking destroyed any thinking machine. And it's an interesting bit in the I think something I'm looking for now in the new series, or in Dune Part 2 and rewatching Dune 1, is how they do their entertainment. In the miniseries, I thought it was really telling that you never really saw anyone watching TV or anything like that. All the entertainment in the miniseries was done with puppets and live music and plays, because computers are fucking outlawed.
Yeah. And it's those little things like that you don't necessarily get in any of the films, but again, they have to compress all that, right? They have to make it all fit in those little details. But on that point, it's if someone was to really ask or think about that, we could do a whole film on the rise and fall of machines in the Dune world.
Yeah. Something.
Go ahead, Seth. Nope. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, so something else that the Dune miniseries did that the 1984 film didn't, and one of the reasons why they extended it out to 3 parts, is because they were also telling the story of another major character of Princess Irulan, and kind of giving her part of the story a lot more breathing room. And in the actual...
Which was great. I really appreciated that more now at this point than when I first saw the sci-fi series.
Yeah, and I can't remember if that was a part of the actual books, or if that was something that the adaptation took upon itself. I need to reread Dune. I really do. But yeah, Princess Irulan was very important in the miniseries one, as she's one of the another person who you see start off kind of as a child in the beginning, having to deal with their with learning how to do just like be treated like a child and grow into a full adult who eventually just like seizes control of the galaxy. It like her role in this was pretty cool.
I just think that people are more intelligent, audiences are more intelligent than Hollywood often gives credit, and the popularity of Dune and its lasting power, and the popularity of Game of Thrones and its lasting power, it really illustrates that you can't, like, you should have your fun, mindless in action movies or sci-fi movies, and that's great, but really Hollywood should take the chance more on the intelligent big budget films. And not just a little bit, but like go all in, and those would appear to become the classics that we continue to watch and remake.
How many of you are watching the Foundation series on Apple?
I don't have Apple, otherwise
I don't have Apple.
I am loving Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's kind of a different media because we're talking about the current Dune film is what I'm kind of referencing here, as contrasted to the Foundation series, which is on Apple. What do you think? How would you compare the two of them, Chris?
So Foundation, similarly to Dune, is something that spans largely across time, thousands of years or what have you. So again, it's one of those things that's hard to bring justice to the screen from what the books cover.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone through a lot of the books. I just know of them and kind of what they're supposed to cover broadly. But I do like the series that they've put out so far and where things kind of start to intertwine. I would say that Foundation is harder to sometimes, the series is sometimes harder to follow because they do maybe a little bit of a better job of adhering to some of that lore that's in there and grasping that and building out that complex universe. So in that, I hope they don't lose track of that as they build out that series and continue with additional seasons, because it does play out well, I think, when you get to some kind of end. You feel more fulfilled over it versus, I wish they'd talk about this or cover that. Foundation seems to do a pretty good job of trying to cover as much as possible, but in doing that, it can also get dry at sometimes, in some of the areas. So you got to really commit on Foundation, but I found that it's been worth it so far.
So, and I'm kind of, I guess, specifically thinking about the visual aspects of it, and how well realized both worlds are. And I think in both cases, they've just done a fantastic job with it. I mean, the visuals in the Foundation series are just spectacular. I mean,
and I think it speaks to how far we've come.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Recent technologies, and we saw this with The Mandalorian. Disney built a whole stage thing where they can basically use one area over and over, and they have this wall of this ultra high definition video. They can place them wherever they need to be and make their set scopes just crazy insane. And other people are coming up with similar types of technology for that, and the world building is just basically, there's no excuse today. If you have a budget to not have a really well-built world, especially when you already have the content and the lore available to you in the book series that a lot of these things are being derived from. There's no excuse anymore. To just not get it right.
Yeah, and I really think that Hollywood and directors and screenwriters need to start trusting the authors a bit more.
I'd agree with that. Yeah,
like stick closer to the book. It just like the author knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
stick close to what they had.
Yeah, they strayed quite a bit from the books in the Foundation series on Apple, and the main reason for that was they didn't believe that audiences would be able to stay vested in characters that ended up dying off every couple of weeks, because this takes place over the 1,000-year time span of this empire. And, so obviously characters are going to live 80 years or whatever. Right. And you're not going to see their whole lifespan. You'll see just a portion of it. So you'd constantly have characters coming and going, and then trying to get the audience to buy into a whole new string of characters and kind of a change in the structure of the story as it goes along, because the universe is failing and different factions are rising and others are disappearing into the dust, right? And so they figured they needed to have some way to provide that continuity in this long story for the audience to be able to have characters that they can identify with. And I have to say credit to the writers and the way the method that they came up with of doing this. One was with the emperor, where he's basically a cloned, and you have the Brother Dawn, Brother Day, Brother Dusk, right? And so there's always three of them. And so no matter where you go in the future, you've got those same three at different ages, different times in their lifespan that are sitting on the throne. And then you've got different characters like Harry Seldon that's kind of become like a digital artifact of himself, right? And then you've got Gail Dornick that, she constantly ends up having to go from place to place, and she doesn't have the advantage of getting on these light ships to go there. She has to get into a stasis pod and go into suspended animation for 20 some years to get from point A to point B. So I think they did a pretty good job with that. And so to me, the creativity and the storytelling and the way the world's realized and the acting is on par with Dune. And I love both of them. I'm really looking forward to the sequel coming out here. Actually, it starts airing here in Omaha on Thursday at IMAX.
So we had to put this out on Wednesday, this episode or something.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that on Foundation, and like I said, they had plenty of lore to work with to kind of build out a world, and to to your point, credit to the writers for being able to just take it and make something that was more or less believable, that would string all that together, because they had so much to work with over 1,000 years. So and Dune is similar, but to Seth's point as well, if you have a concrete story, I've seen where Hollywood has messed it up, or somebody's brought a mini series to the screen based off a book, and they completely rewrite some aspects. Probably the personal tragedy for me was a book from Terry Goodkind, the Sword of Truth series that they brought to television, and they rewrote, some key character aspects, like Darken Rawl, the main villain in it being Richard Rawls, the main character in it, being his, I think they made it his brother. In the books, it was his father, which was a pretty significant change in how you do it. Now, I get taking liberties with some things, and you're building out a miniseries, but they kind of kill the potential of what that world was, and in the significance of other characters and who they were, by changing something like why change something that's that trivial? So they should have stuck with the writer at that point. And what was even more kind of irritating, and Terry Goodkind has long since passed, I think a few years now, but he was involved in the project, and that was kind of mind-boggling. That you actually had the writer, the author involved in the filmmaking, and then still kind of get his sign off on it was a little bit interesting. And
it was like how involved and how much of a sign off. It was like
And so if I had made it to one of his book signings or something, one of the things I would have asked him flat out was like, how did you let that atrocity come to be? Now, if you go into it, mind you, without any knowledge of the books, without having read them, it's a decent story for what it is. They built it to be kind of like your Xena and Hercules type series, and as you know, those went on for a few years, and I guess were generally well liked, and that's kind of what they were shooting for, and they had that look and feel, and I thought that was great. Ultimately they ended up canning it, and it's still it's mind-boggling that to that extent that it got that warped, and I hate it when I see that. So
Yeah.
there's give or take. There's sticking to the lore. There's and sticking to what the writers did. There's just completely rewriting it, but being in the essence or the feel of the world, and then there's what we've been working with between Foundation and Dune and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to Dune Part 2. By the way, I love the first.
Oh
I
yeah.
think all of us here did.
Yeah.
So
You guys all planning to see it this weekend?
Probably not. For me, just because of work reasons, but busy.
Yeah, I think Linda and I might go see it on Thursday. You get 10% off at the IMAX if you go to like a early afternoon show. And since, we've got nothing else to do.
We got the COVID
Linda,
showing.
let's go.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So we'll be looking forward to that. Thanks for tuning in to the show, and let us know what you think in the comments. If you have a particular fondness for the original 1984 movie or the series that came out, or if there's something about the particular movies that are out now, part 1 or part 2, you have maybe a bone to pick with them, or you're really excited about them, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. And Seth will get on there and argue with you.
Was I arguing so much today?
No, not at all. But I mean, you like to, take the you're very opinionated. So if somebody,
but
yes, so if somebody comes out and says they hate Dune, we'll put Seth on it because he's like a dog with a bone.
No, I just stab him with a Chris knife and move on, as my savior has taught me.
Fair enough. All right, folks.
Long live the fighters.
Seth would have been a great Freeman.
Fremen.
I don't know why I always say Freeman. I always do. Probably always will. Freeman. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next time. See y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.